There were certain drawbacks to studying and living in Rome. Lots of cars, lots of smog, busyness, relentlessness, protests, strikes. There were drawbacks, but to be sure, there were benefits as well. For example, I had a class in archaeology, and so consistently we met at the site that we were to discuss in class. So, for example, when it came time to discuss the catacombs, those ancient tunnels of the first Christians, where they could hide because it was illegal to be Christian, where they could bury their loved ones because that too was illegal, well, we journeyed to St. Sebastian's catacombs and go underground and had class there. Or when we discussed the Roman Forum, the Senate, we would travel there. Still to this day you can see where people sat waiting for their case to be heard and playing games. And the dice or whatever it was, the rocks probably that they were using for whatever game it was, you could see had made indentations over the centuries in that marble. Near the Forum is the Mamertine prison. That prison was constructed in the 7th century BC. It's an ancient structure. The lowest part, the dungeon, was initially a cistern, as I understand it, so you can imagine what it would have been like to be placed there. No light, no ventilation, just rock, no accommodations, no cleaning, no refreshing yourself. A dark, dark place. There's a plaque that hangs in that area. At the bottom of the plaque, there's an inscription which reads, "O you who pass by, venerate in silence the terrible or glorious echoes of 25 centuries of history." Can you imagine? Imagine all the pain and suffering and anguish of that place. Now, above that inscription is a partial list of inmates, which includes the names of Saints Peter and Paul. It's likely from this place, but for sure from a prison cell, that Paul wrote the words to the Philippians that we heard today. Rejoice in the Lord always. I shall say it again, rejoice. It's almost inconceivable, isn't it? There in that terrible space, awaiting his trial and death sentence, Paul says to rejoice always. If the most, let's call it psychophysiological, destructive event of death was embraced and overcome by God in the person of Jesus Christ, that event which ruptures the human being, if that was embraced by God in the person of Jesus Christ, well, St. Paul seems to imply then that every lesser destructive force has been embraced by God and overcome by him too. For example, the worst and final scenario of a cancer diagnosis is death. Cancer is contained, if you will, under the umbrella of death. It's death reaching out and affecting human existence. The same can be said of physical injury, of aging, of mental illness, and of mental anguish. St. John Henry Newman has this powerful sermon in which he speaks about the mental sufferings of Christ. He said, well, animals experience physical pain, but animals do not experience mental suffering like human beings do. Like, how long will this last? Can I endure? Can I make it? will it ever end? Or in Jesus' words, my God, why have you abandoned me? Every human experience and tragedy and injustice has been embraced and overcome by God. So don't despair, but rejoice, Paul says. It's not an emotion that he's saying should well up. It's a choice on your part. And how is that possible? What does he say? Have no anxiety at all, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God. Then the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Speak your needs, give thanks, entrust your situation to God, and you can be confident that whatever God permits somehow fits into his plan of redemption in which he has involved us. This is what overcomes anxiety. Anxiety has to do with a lack of hope and with an over-reliance on oneself. Speak your needs, give thanks, and trust your situation to God. This is what gives rise to peace, which we deeply need with such widespread experiences of anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts and even actions in our day, and especially in our youth in our day. Friends, let me close with this. St. Paul said, with thanksgiving, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving. The original word in the Greek that he wrote is Eucharistias. With prayer and petition and Eucharistias. It sounds like Eucharist, does it not? In the past couple of weeks, priests in this area have been hearing lots of confessions at parishes, at grade schools and high schools. I noticed something I really enjoyed visiting with the high schoolers this year. I took a lot of time and spoke with them as they entered into that sacrament. And one of the things that came up multiple times was struggling with going to Mass, not wanting to go to Mass, avoiding Mass. And I began to perceive that they don't see it as relevant because they don't understand it. That became clear. It's often, maybe most often at best, and this is according to research that we have as well, understood more like a Protestant, let's say a Lutheran meal, where the elements are not transformed, and so there's no transformation of the person involved. And then it becomes less of an imperative to be there and more of a entertainment activity. So the way in which I found myself approaching the high schoolers was something like this. What do you think life's about? What's the purpose of life? I love the expressions. Some were very sincere and thoughtful in their responses, but almost all of them got to the point of saying something like, it has to do with doing good in this world, of making some sort of positive contribution. I said, so you're saying it has to do with the encounter of good and evil. Is that what you're saying? And helping good to triumph over evil? Yes, they would say. They say that's precisely at the heart of the Catholic Mass, where space has been made by Jesus in this great act of overcoming, triumphing over evil, so that you and I can bring forward our small little offerings of seeking to do good in this world, so that he can take them up, join into his, and make them powerful and substantial, which you then receive back something that changes you, transforms you, so you can be a greater agent of transformation in this world, helping you to fulfill that which you have identified as your purpose. Friends, your life with its hardships, disappointments, sadness, and loss doesn't fall outside of God's redeeming will. He has confidence in you to work with him to carry the light of faith and hope and love into every dark situation and bend it back towards the one who makes all things new with you. Think of the lost sheep. Think of Jesus eating with sinners, tax collectors, prostitutes. Think of him with the sick, the possessed, the dead, and those mourning their loss. Work with him, Paul is encouraging us. You have every reason then to rejoice.